Hello and welcome to tutorial number 13 on the feeling. I apologise for how long it's been since my last tutorial, never said that one before. But since then, I've graduated from university.
Honours degree of Bachelor of Science in Computer Science, Ethan Ansell.
Got my first full-time job. Moved away to start living on my own for the first time. Got smacked on the head and got treated to a free craniotomy. But I'm back. And this time, I'm gonna complete this infernal tutorial series.
Like that's ever gonna happen.
I've got an absolute jewel in the works, but I won't upload it until this is done, so it's time to get a move on. So, this tutorial is going to be on this sound right here. So this sort of randomised up sound in the intro. Which is this one. So, the essence of this sound is that I was trying to create a single preset where I suppose I could assign a lot of stuff to one knob, kind of like a macro knob, right, as synths often have, and have the position of the automation clip be like a random seed, so that it would create random sounds, but where you could automate the randomness so that it would come out the same every time. And to get different sounds, you would just change the height of these automation points. So basically what I was trying to do is create a single synth preset that could create glitches like this. So I would just assign loads of random stuff to one knob, and then the position of the knob would produce a random output, so that I could just play around with the heights of all these automation clips and create stuff like this. Because the problem with doing it in audio like this is, well, among other things, aside from the fact that it's not easily editable, you can't change the note. So what if it's in a note that's not in the scale of the song you're playing? You're screwed, you have to do it again. But anyway, so whatever. So this didn't really work. It didn't give me what I was looking for, but it still sounds kind of cool, so it made it into the song. So I suppose the gist of the sound, because it's so focused on randomness, is going to mean that whatever I'm about to recreate is probably not going to sound exactly like this. It's going to be kind of difficult to recreate the original exactly, but oh well. So this sound was originally intended to play the melody once I decided I wasn't going to use it for glitches. So somewhere all the way at the end of my project, and by the way, I always have like deleted scenes, kind of extra junk at the end of every project. It was going to play the melody, so it's here somewhere. Which still sounds kind of cool, but didn't really fit anywhere in the song, so... So anyway, so let's get on to actually making this sound now. So, let's open Harmor. This sound was made in Harmor. Righty then, so now we have Harmor. First thing, as always, bang, 2 octaves down. Bass. Next thing I did to try and get a kind of weird sound was, hang on, whack up the frequency to 4 and divide the D tune by 4. Now as you can see, all it's done here is cut off the lowest few harmonics. So if I undo this, turn up the frequency, divide the D tune. So for those of you who aren't aware, frequency obviously just moves all of these up and down, so it's just pitch. D tune does the same as frequency, but just ignores the fundamental, which is the lowest one. So effectively what we're doing is moving all of them up and then squishing them together, so that they all, well, not coincidentally, so they all match up exactly to where they were before. So this is identical to just having, so a custom filter shape, having a high pass with like no smooth curve or anything. Whoops, that's a low pass. So you just have a filter shape like this. And then you could just, so I'll put this back to where it was. And then you could just do something like this. Hang on a second, where does it start? So that's exactly the same result. But that's not what I did. So why did I change these particular knobs? I don't know. I wanted something strange, I suppose. So let's put this back to the default. That's not the default. Whatever, it doesn't make a difference. Yes, it does, for goodness sake. Right then. So the first thing I did was add a phaser, because a phaser totally messes up the sound, makes it sound totally different, so that as I'm randomizing the offset, which you can do in Harmor, which is nice, it'll sound totally different for each different offset position, which is perfect for what you want to do with randomness. So what I did was whack up the mix, turn down the speed to 0, which you just do by putting it in the middle, of course, so just so that it doesn't move by itself, so that I can only move it by turning the offset knob. Then I turn the width down by exactly 2%. Now that's crucially important. You don't want it to sound like this. It's of imperative importance that it sounds exactly like this. Never get those two things confused. So now that we've got that sorted out, I would just spin the offset knob around like a roulette wheel until it landed exactly here. For, of course, no reason whatsoever, but for the sake of completeness, that's where I happen to leave the knob. So now I'm going to talk about the most important part of this sound, which is how I achieve that whole randomness malarkey. So a lot of synthesizers, so take Citrus for example, provide in there like Harmor has this as well. Why didn't I just show you in Harmor? Never mind. Provide in there like modulation, a randomness source. So here's a sine wave. So if I just do volume to randomness, then basically a random value is picked on the x-axis every time, and whatever that corresponds to on the y-axis is what gets output right. So you end up with a slightly random volume every time. And if I want to randomize between just, like 75% and 100%, I would do this, right? Only problem with this is that it comes out different every time. And that's what I wanted to avoid with this whole randomness thing. So that's why I did what I'm about to show you, instead of just using the like random modulation source like I could do here, random mapping. Because I wanted it to be the same every time. I wanted to settle on one thing that I liked, and then leave it like that. Because otherwise, whether or not it sounds any good depends on what the weather is today, what brand of weed God was smoking when he picked the random numbers that would come out of my computer, you know what I mean? I don't want it to depend on chance, whether or not it sounds good, right? I want it to be predictable. So, what I did was, I would take the phaser offset, wherever it is, modulation X mapping, and make it control everything completely. So this mod X knob is basically the same as the offset knob now. Pretty self-explanatory what it's doing, really. And then what I would do is I would right-click here, go wave, and then just basically do this. Just leave it at a really insanely high setting. And the reason for this is, even though it's clearly not actually random, that doesn't really matter. It's not like it's like randomly generating me a secure cryptographic key or something where it really matters that it's legitimately random. Like, all that matters is it's unpredictable what value you're going to get out. So for every X value I choose, I get a different phaser offset value. It's kind of unpredictable what I'm going to get is the point. So this is what I did for everything, basically. So now I'm just going to dispassionately list all of the random knobs I decide to do this to. What I wanted is for the sound to be as different as possible for each X value, so I just automated loads of stuff just like this, or attached loads of random stuff to the modulation X. So let's just go through what that was now. So basically, filter 1, I basically took the width, so I could say quick map to modulation X, and I'm here. And then I just wave, and then I would set them all to a slightly different version. So let's just turn this to here, say. And this is why it's difficult to get it just the same as the original, because who knows what exact tension I used. And I also did that to the frequency, quick map to modulation X, wave, do it like this. So you can see we're starting to get somewhere now. I also did that to the resonance amount, quick map to modulation X, wave, resonance width, quick map to modulation X, wave. Anyway, so as for the actual filter settings, I used crude band stop. Why? Because, I suppose. Values were just like this. And I really apologise for not being specific and just saying, I picked these values, fuck you, copy me, I'm not going to explain the reasons behind anything. But I don't know. I was just pressing all the buttons to see what came out, I suppose. Anyway, so the resonance, I just cranked it up so that you could actually hear it, and turned up the width for some reason or another. So now, we're really making progress. I also did the timbre 1 and 2 mix, wave, you know the drill by now, and also panning, went between plus and minus 100%. Bit of a side note, what the hell is with this hang on a minute, not envelope, modulation X, what the hell is with this panning window? Because if you look, so, whoops, look up here in the hint panel, you can see the value, so 100% left, 200% left, what? You can pan more than 100%? How? What? What the hell is happening? So look, this is 200%, and it's sort of going a little bit through the right, and this is 100%, and it's also exactly the same, which is kind of annoying actually. I mean, it's not actually panning to the left. Why not? It's coming through both ears slightly. That's not what panning 100% left means, is it? But then 200% doesn't do anything. What's going on? How do you pan more than 100%? Anyway, whatever. So let's just do it to plus minus 100% and forget about it. There we go. And then of course wave. That'll do. This is a filled in rectangle. Alright, so next the harmonizer. Just turn up a bit so it's hearable. Play with whatever width value you think is the best. And then as always, harmonizer width, quick map to mod X, wave, I'll just leave it. So with this it was about 50 to 100%, because I didn't want it to be off. And then the prism, I just turned up a little tiny bit, just to give everything a bit of flavour, I suppose. So this sounds pretty cool now. So that's pretty much the entire synth done now. That's basically everything. Basically just, I suppose, a little side note is when you're mapping something in this mod X mapping window, what does the actual knob's value do? I looked for this in the manual, and maybe I didn't look very hard, but I couldn't figure it out at all. Let me show you some incredibly bizarre, I just can't understand what the hell's going on. If someone can enlighten me, I'd be very grateful. But that's kind of not the point of a tutorial video. I should be bloody enlightening you, but whatever. So, get a load of this. If I go crude low pass, quick map to modulation X, if I turn it to the bottom, look at the waveform. Not waveform, the spectrum. If I turn the mod X down, what? It goes below 0. But it's already at 0. What's going on? It goes below 0. And if I leave frequency in the middle and turn it down, it still does the same. Like, so it's not just ignoring the knob's value. The knob's position does do something, but somehow it goes outside the range. Or does it? Am I just being an idiot and I can't comprehend what's going on? I don't know. What happens to the value you set on the knob and the value you've set at the mod X? How do they get combined? I have no idea. Absolutely mystical. So that pretty much concludes that. So the last thing to talk about really is just how the automation was done in the piano roll. So first things first, I'm going to take the notes, copy, create a new pattern, give it a really descriptive name like paste in the notes, put that at the end. So I'm just going to show you how to do the automation. It's pretty simple. Just create automation clip, and then use the hold type. So the reason being that obviously it doesn't make any sense, because it's supposed to be like put a random value in, get a random value out. It doesn't really make any sense to automate it with a straight line. So if I do this, yeah, that's horrendous. So hold is the idea. So like I said right at the beginning, each automation clip height is like a random seed. It doesn't matter what the value is, just that if you put in the same value, you'll get the same sounding output. So you just mess with these heights until you get something you like, basically. And then it sounds the same every time. Whoopee. Right, so to talk a bit more about the original now, let's talk about the effects. I'm going to show you the effects on the original. Pretty simple. So basically, there's a transient processor which does practically nothing. So originally, I suppose, because this was supposed to make short glitches like this, I wanted the transient processor to emphasize each short clip more. So it was like in your face kind of thing. But it didn't really make a difference to this sound, so you can pretty much ignore that. Well, unless you're like a mega Superman and can somehow hear the difference between this and this. Yeah, it doesn't really do a whole lot, so you can just ignore that, really. Now, the other thing, which actually does have some consequence, unlike what I said about 5 seconds ago, is this reverb. So, I'll show you what this is for. So, I mean, well, it's a reverb, but let me demonstrate. So, for some reason, this is moved to a different track. Don't remember doing that. There's our sound. Alright, so let's give it a mixer insert. So, add a reverb. So basically what I did was link up the decay and the wet to the automation clip, kind of like I did before. Now, one way you could do this, so that you could create this kind of randomness with any plugin, Fruity or otherwise, is you could do Fruity what? What the hell? Fruity envelope controller. And you could basically just do modulation X mapping wave in a similar sort of way. And then you could attach any knob in any synth. So let's just say a non-fruity synth. Let's take Serum. And you could attach it to this by tweaking the knob. Then go to Tools, Last Tweaked, Link to Controller, and then Fruity envelope controller articulator 1. Accept. So now it's attached to this. But it only applies when you play a note. So you have to, and it has an envelope. Disable the envelope. And then continuous output. So it doesn't just apply when you do a note. So now you can see this knob moving as I change the mod X here. So you can use Fruity envelope controller to do this with a layer of multiple synths, perhaps, or any combination of any knobs from any synth, which is cool. But this was kind of overkill just for this little reverb. So what I did was decay, link to controller, and then I picked the automation clip. So this default modulation X, that's the modulation clip. And then I would just type so you can do, so that basically you have a mapping formula here, and you have all kinds of like special stuff in there. So you can do sine of the input, go. Now, obviously this is pretty slow, so input times 100 would make it 100 times faster in the x-axis. So if you remember graph transformations from school, from maths class, well, this will help you here. So I think I did times 1,000, or just some big number, and then divide it by 10 to make it not quite so big in the y-axis. So now, basically, all it does is just a sine wave based on the input, going from 0 to 1/10 of the maximum, which is obviously 1. So accept. So now the decay, or whatever it was, I right-clicked, pretty sure it was the decay, is linked to this modulation X envelope. So what I can do is, I did the same with the wet, so link to modulation X, sine input times some big number, 2,500, can't remember what the original was, doesn't matter so much, divided by, ooh, what did I do? Let's just say, I'll say 10 again. Nah, more than that, okay, divided by 5. Ooh, more than that, divided by 3. Anyway, I was an idiot because don't check remove conflicts. This just removes anything else that's assigned to the same thing. So don't do that. It just removed my original mapping. So let's just type the same thing again, times 1,000 divided by 10. Right. Now decay and wet are linked to this automation clip in the same way. Now we do this first, now, because now if I were to make this unique, it would copy all the same links over, which is handy. So these are links to our new unique automation clip, which is handy. So now we have our sound. It sounds slightly different, but what are you going to do? Alright, so that's everything. One final detail is that for some reason, I cannot remember because I made this track years ago, this isn't routed to subcuts. So it's this, I have this channel here, subcut, which just cuts out the sub, hence the name. It's not routed to that, presumably because I was originally going to use it for these sort of glitches, and I wanted to keep the bass. Either that, or because it's barely got any bass because of the frequency detune thing at the beginning, but whatever. Well, that concludes that sound. Hope you enjoyed this video. See you in the next one.